Hello, everyone, and welcome to our online live fire demonstration of the Guardian Indoor Active Shooter Detection System. My name is Kendra Noonan. I'm the Director of Communications here at Shooter Detection Systems, and I want to thank you all for taking the time out of your busy schedules to attend today. Before we get started, I just want to turn your attention to some WebEx controls that will help you see the presentation better. You'll want to watch in full screen mode, so to maximize your screen, there's a double arrow to the right-hand corner of the small screen where you should be able to see our presentation front page right now. And then to exit out of full screen mode, all you need to do is move your cursor to the top of the screen and click Return. We have a large and diverse audience online today. We have some hospitals, financial institutions, schools, major corporations, as well as some state and federal government agencies. And on that note, I would like to take a moment to address the major city chiefs and law enforcement officers that have joined us today to say that we stand with you and support your efforts to keep our communities safe. We're going to do our best today to keep this presentation brief so you can all get back to business very soon. And so what I'd like to do now is just turn your attention to our panelists today. We have Rich Onofrio, our lead design engineer for SDS, and he's sitting in to take your questions via the Q&A chat window. We welcome any questions you have, so please direct them to Rich by clicking the Q&A window on the right bottom of your screen. And we will also round up some frequently asked questions at the end of today's program. And we also have a special guest joining us today from Genetec. Although our Guardian system is integrated with many different technologies, from mass alert notifications, access control, video management systems, today we're going to feature our integration with Genetec, and we have Jared Fullerton. He's the Regional Sales Manager for Genetec for the Northeast, and he's joining in our office today to help the audience understand all the different things that you can do with the Genetec system when a gunshot detection alarm is raised. We're really excited about our technology partnership with Genetec, and we're working on a lot of opportunities together here in the U.S., some abroad, and we have quite a few completed projects under our belts together as well. So we'll hear from Jared a little later in the program. And so what I'd like to do now is introduce our presenter today, Dan Marshall. Dan is a 23-year retired Navy SEAL Master Chief and a business development specialist for SDS. And we're very proud to have him on our team as a presenter and educator about our product and how it can fit into your security response protocols and assist from a tactical perspective. So, Dan, I want to thank you for being here, and feel free to start whenever you're ready.
Good afternoon, everyone. Today, what we're going to do is we're going to go through a brief product overview of our system and describe some of its capabilities, the ability to integrate, and then talk about some efforts that we've been working on current and in future. And then followed up, we're going to do a live fire demonstration where we'll show the application of our system integrated with third-party video management system, as Kendra had mentioned. So the active shooter problem, unfortunately, it's become too real and too commonplace in our society. And we look at measures to try and mitigate these threats in environments that we never thought we would ever have to be worrying about someone firing off a weapon system. This isn't just a policing problem. This is also a societal problem where we're all within the fray of this event, and we all benefit from key critical information to either make the best decision to save our own lives or from first responders, the critical information allows them to isolate and contain the threat. The one thing that is a common denominator, because we can't really identify the location of when it'll happen or where it'll happen. We just know that ultimately it will happen, but the common denominator for everybody involved is time. Time for occupants to know immediately that there is an active shooter event so that they can understand what they can do to put best practices in place from an active shooter protocol. Time for law enforcement to get critical information so they can start isolating, containing the threat, and move to mitigate any harm or loss of life. And then additionally, we want to take time away from the shooter. We want to make sure that that shooter knows from the first time that shot goes off that the clock is ticking and that their opportunity to do harm or worse is going to end very rapidly via apprehension or they leave the scene. Ultimately, what we do is we remove, the threat from the occupants in the area. A lot of times with response and reporting, we're caught up in, the reporting of 911 or the trying to describe an event to somebody that's not there and have them use that information to make the best decision to mitigate that threat. So we'll talk a little bit more about how specifically when you have an immediate alert, by decreasing the response time, we can decrease incident duration, which will ultimately save lives. So when we talk about our product, the company history and the technical history, Raytheon BBN Technologies invented gunshot detection and the boomerang gunshot detection system. This was our sniper alert system that was deployed overseas to protect our service members. We've since, SDS has acquired this capability in 2013 to address the indoor gunshot detection threat. The technical team from Raytheon BBN moved and established shooter detection systems. This team's designed, tested, and fielded over 10,000 outdoor acoustic microphone-based systems in the loudest environments possible, to include military vehicles and helicopters. If we knew that a solely microphone-based sensor could work in an indoor environment, we would have leveraged our leading-edge acoustic technology to implement the approach. But after initial testing, the SDS team knew that they needed to add a second mode, an infrared sensor, to augment the microphones in order to prevent false alerts. So our system, how it works, it's a very small, discrete, utilizing military-grade components, power over Ethernet. If you put in a frame of reference, very similar to the size of a smoke detector. Notification happens within about 700 milliseconds. We're a dual mode system, so we have acoustic sensors. So if you look up to the left, image of our sensor, the two top acoustic arrays are listening for the decibel noise of a weapon system, whether it be subsonic or supersonic, meaning rifle, handgun, or pistol. And then below that are two infrared sensors that are looking for the infrared flash or the muzzle flash of the weapon system. So all weapons emit an infrared flash, even suppressed. So we use those two pieces of information to validate. So what we do is we get a two-technology approach. It's like having a double witness. You see and hear. The information is objective. It's not subjective, and it doesn't have to be evaluated and acoustically monitored to see if it is a gunshot. All this happens within a second. The testing of our system was based off of a threshold of a 22 caliber weapon. So if I have a 22 caliber weapon and I'm 40 feet from the sensor, fully occluded, meaning the weapon does not have to see the sensor, I can discharge that weapon and it will alert. Larger weapon systems obviously have a greater area of coverage, but we at least had to establish a benchmark to cover a likely weapon system that would be used in an active shooter event. So what we look at is sensors have a 40-foot radius of coverage, about 2,500 square foot of coverage, field of view, not line of sight. We have a simple SDK integration. This allows us to integrate with camera and other existing security systems, from access control and mass notification. So we've done quite a bit of independent testing, and I'll highlight a few. We've most recently done a major metro city within the U.S. We were tested against another acoustic-only system. Hands down, in that test, we were chosen based off the fact that we did not false alert and based off the immediate response of our system. Our system doesn't have to be conditioned or environmentally set up in any environment that it's put in. Once you plug it in, it works. We've done independent testing in international airports within the U.S. Where they've tested all the different aspects of noises and flashes from the different, operating equipment within the airport itself, and we did not false alert. Probably the most extensive study that we did a 8-month study in a European city, and reports back is that we met or greatly exceeded our published requirements and then their requirements for reliability of an active shooter system. Department of Homeland Security, we've been working intimately with them for about the past 3 years. Most recently, in the last active shooter exercise, high-profile exercise that they ran was at Fenway Park. We were the system that alerted the active shooter event. And then also we've worked in some denied communication space, specifically back in November in a subway city in Manhattan. Once again, a DHS-sponsored NYPD counterterrorism event addressing the active shooter threat. And what we showcased is we get an immediate alert in an area that does not have great communication, and we were to pinpoint the location so officers were able to respond in a quick and timely manner to address the threat. Major software company evaluated our system and based off its IT concerns and met all their requirements. And then we continue to work within the Department of Defense space, refining their requirements to address the active shooter threat. Bottom line is in head-to-head competitions against other gunshot detection systems, we've had 100% run rate, and it's based on our system's ability to not false alert in any indoor environment. Here's kind of how it works, what happens when a shot's detected. So we see that the sensor is networked back through a switch. The shot's fired, the sensor alerts, it goes back to our gateway, which is our software that runs either on a standalone computer or on your server. From there, we have a situational awareness client, a master. So that's our mapping software, and I'll highlight that in upcoming slides. Our mapping software lays out floor plan and location of the shooter with a visual and audio alert. From that, we can alert via SMS texting and email. We have the ability to integrate within third-party, and we've integrated within third-party IP integration from access control, video management, mass notification, and then existing security systems that have a dry contact relay option so that we can trigger zones based off the customer's infrastructure. So I mentioned about the situational awareness tool, our map. This map is located either in a security operations center, on a remote desktop. So now you have a visual and a location and floor plans of your facility or your location. So we have the ability to not just do floors, which are represented in the left-hand corner on thumbnails of each floor, but we can also do multiple buildings and fuse them all together. So we use a stoplight system for our sensors. So green is health and status, green is good. And then we use amber and red to utilize for shots that are detected. So if you move down to the right-hand part of the map, you'll look and see a green dot with a red halo. That's our most recent shot. We'll highlight how this system works during the live fire, but here we'll walk you through what this actually map represents. So the most subsequent shot was the green dot with the red halo, and as we move back to the left portion of the screen, we'll see red, and then we'll go to amber, then we'll go to yellow. That yellow dot is the first shot that happened at the facility. And then what we've done is we've showed a breadcrumb trail of additional shots and movement of the individual during that active shooter event. Why that's important is for two different reasons. One, if I'm an occupant in the building and I know that there's been a shot, I get an immediate notification within a second. Now I can start to adjust what my plan is to save my own life, or if I'm in charge or if I have crowd control, I can start to formulate that plan of how I'm going to address the issue. Second is if I'm an occupant in the building, I'm also going to look at that and I may make the best decision to run, hide, or fight based off the proximity of the individual. And this information is relayed to law enforcement, so now they have a start point in the event. So now it's not a subjective shots fired, and now this whole building is my problem. Now I have a pinpoint location or a start point where I can start my approach. Subsequent stops, subsequent movement, now I can adjust my ground tactical plan, potentially how I enter the building, where I enter, and how I can isolate and contain the threat quicker. Just a small sampling of our technology partners. Like I mentioned earlier, we've done quite a bit of integration based off the capability. What's represented here, access control, mass notification, and video management systems. Some project samplings of where we're installed. So we look at K through 12 and universities, major corporation and headquarters, municipalities and court systems, and power utility. Power utility, not only do we address the indoor space, but we also address the outdoor space, protecting critical infrastructure protective requirements, CIP 14 requirements. Here's our current installations. You can see that there's really no specific area that we cover. It's not just K through 12 or universities. There's a large, diverse kind of installation effort from insurance companies, universities, court systems, manufacturing facilities where they have a lot of machines running and acoustic signatures that would potentially cause havoc to an acoustic-only system. And I think the key factor here is within all these locations that were installed, 12+ million hours and growing, we've had 0 false alerts. So we have some upcoming projects in the next few months. As you can see, airports, cruise ports, some retail chain headquarters, distribution centers, international malls, corporate headquarters, financial institutions, hospital healthcare facilities. And I'm going to highlight here, if you look around the clock, you see current installs. The system is fairly benign. It's placed in walls and in ceilings. So what you see here is it's not a system that's so overt that it draws a lot of attention. Initially, we thought there would be maybe a lot of attention when we started to install in K through 12, and the reality is it's not really noticed at all, and it blends in with other technologies that are in our environment today. So with that, I'm going to transition over to Kendra, and we're going to start our live fire. So as Kendra gets set up, I'm going to walk you through the environment of the live fire. What we have today is we'll have an active shooter. The active shooter is going to represent a threat, whether it's a terrorist threat, an inside threat from workplace violence, or just someone that is ideally just going to look at trying to cause harm or whatever based on their event. So what we do is we'll show an integration with our system, integrated with a video management system, camera system, our mapping software, and alerts to a cell phone. So just to orientate yourself to what you see here, off to the right is our mapping software. As I mentioned earlier, the health and status, what you see is green health and status, meaning all that our sensors are up and running. And part of that mapping software, you'll see thumbnails. So this is our corporate headquarters, so it's not a large facility, but what we highlight is that we can do multiple floors and multiple buildings within a compound, and they can also be remote. So we can fuse all this information. If there's multiple buildings that are geographically dispersed, it can pull back all to one security operations center. So those thumbnails represent all the sensor location. And if you look at the sensor locations, those central locations are defined with a common naming convention. So the sensors aren't necessarily room 103. We can name those sensors to, executive conference room, or things that either occupants or people that were visiting would understand based off location without having to know a specific room number. You'll look at multiple floor plans. When the system alerts, it's going to get an immediate alert and location and an audio and visual location of the shot. Off to the left, this is our Genetec video management system. So what we have is we're in monitoring mode. We've got 4 cameras that are displayed. We do have some sensors in rooms where we don't have cameras, and we'll highlight that. But what you do now is we have a live streaming video with cameras that are in place. Up to the left of the monitoring, there's an alarm button. When the shot is fired, it's going to immediately trigger an alarm within the video management system, and that is going to pull up and give us that feed and give us a playback mode, so we're going to see the activity. The key with all these systems as we put them in play, we start to remove the human from the decision loop. So as the event and the dynamic active shooter event is happening, these things start to run automatic, because we know that individuals are going to react differently when they're exposed to a specific threat. The last piece of information that we're going to present here is down at the bottom right. There's a phone. The phone is going to receive SMS texting and email alerts, and those alerts are going to be triggered from our system. So out of the box, you're going to get an SMS text or an email alert. You're going to get a notification on our mapping software, video and audible, and then you're also going to get a pull from our video management system that we see off to the left-hand screen. Dave is our active shooter today. He's in the upper left-hand corner of the video. We are going to use blank fire today. To note, the issue with blank fire is just limited range, because it still emits an infrared signature and an acoustic signature. So, when you start to look at active shooter protocols and how we prepare and train, our system does not require a weapon to run drills and protocols. You can run our training tool where you can simulate the shot, but what you can do is simulate the shot, so you're not bringing or introducing a weapon into the workplace. You can simulate a shot, but you can use all the tools from technology to train security personnel, law enforcement, and occupants based off of using location of the shooter and a video management system and mass alert. Dave, can you please stand by? So what you're going to look for here is you're going to look for an alert on the map, the mapping software, and then you're going to look to the left where it'll pull up the camera that's in view, and then obviously a notification will show up on the phone. Okay, go ahead. Shot. First shot goes off, identified by the mapping software. You see the red halo, shot detected, and then you see other measures of technology that pull up. We get movement in the video management system, so now we show a description of the shooter. So not only get location, we get critical information of the shooter with the start point. Shot detected. So what we've seen is the second shot. The second shot is on the second floor. The shooter has moved up to the second floor. And now automatically the system moves. There's no camera associated with that shot. So those are key points that sometimes you may not have a camera that's fused with our sensor, but you're still getting an alert via our mapping software. You're still getting an alert with your phone and also with the video management system. So key information here, if the first shot came out on the first floor and now it's on the second floor, as we look at run, hide, fight, maybe if I'm on the first floor and the shot happens, then I can exit a certain part of the building, I can run. If I'm in close proximity, then maybe that's the time that I hide. If I'm also next to the executive office in a conference room, at that point I may have to make the decision to save my own life. But ultimately you're getting critical information that's going to allow you to make the best decision in this environment. So now we've seen movement of the individual where they left the executive conference room, the executive office, and moved into the conference room. As this develops, what we're now getting is as police start to respond, now they have updated information that is objective information that they can use from a tactical perspective to start to isolate and contain the threat. And what we've seen here is we've seen a shot that's been taken, and it's alerted right away. So now we have individual movement. Although we had two sensors that triggered on the mapping software, if you look down to the bottom right, only one sensor is sending the alert. So what we have is a large caliber weapon system that is actually being picked up by two sensors, but it's only sending one alert to the closest proximity to the sensor. So as we walk through the active shooter threat, what we saw was that your situational awareness was increased. We had, when you look at the mapping software, we have a breadcrumb trail. That breadcrumb trail, although it's small in nature in a building, but a larger facility, now gives updated information to first responders on where to start and where to isolate and contain. Additionally, if you're an occupant in a building, now I have the best information to make an informed decision to save my own life. We've seen in past events, when there's been an active shooter event happening, it's very chaotic. And that information that's passed either via 911 or over the network, a lot of times it's not actionable. One, because if I'm a tactical team that's on the ground, it's very hard to be able to take that information and where does it sit on a timeline of how I can action that information. What we do now is we show that, near instantaneous, within a second, you're getting that information, and that information is being relayed immediately so that you have a start point. When we show that we highlight integrate with other third-party technologies, we can leverage video management, mass notification, and access control. You can now start to use these systems to establish your active shooter protocols. It's an extremely dynamic and chaotic environment, and we're asking individuals to make critical decisions to save their own life. Hopefully we've shown that the past performance of gunshot detection within the military space from counter sniper, we have a zero false alert system. Alerts within seconds. The shots don't have to be analyzed, so it all happens at the sensor. So what we're talking about is decreasing that time to response, time to alert. We integrate with other capabilities, which starts to change the dynamic of the active shooter event. The more information that we have, the more situational awareness that we can add to first responders and occupants, then ultimately we can start to remove the opportunities from an active shooter. We don't solve the whole problem for an active shooter event, but we are the start point. We do believe that, with most active shooter protocols, they're all reliant on knowing where the shooter is. That's what we do now. We identify the location of the shooter, so now that you can be more effective with your active shooter protocols. So with increased information, now you have the tools to make the best decision to save your own life. Now I'm going to turn it over to Jared to maybe go a little bit more in detail on the Genetec video management system.
Great, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. So everybody, on the left-hand side of the screen, we are talking about the security desk interface here. The security desk interface is basically what the end user yourselves would actually be interfacing with when looking back at any kind of live or recorded video. Genetec does quite a bit of things other than just video surveillance. We have license plate recognition, access control, a whole vector-based plan management application as well that actually could tie into all this. But the big key point here is, again, comes down to situational awareness. I may not be sitting in front of this application to actually, on a regular basis, if I was a principal of a high school or something like that, my regular job function isn't to just sit here and watch video. So as these events are coming in live time, it's the application's job to actually notify the correct people, and you can set all that up via event to action. And that's exactly what we're getting here from SDS. We're basically taking the actual events that are coming from the sensors, and we're mapping those events to specific things inside the Genetec application. So here we actually have cameras that are associated to these different areas, and as these events are coming in live time, that's what's actually providing us the alarms. And what we did is, we set up the alarms to actually show the recorded video of the event so you could go back and scrub. We can set these events up however you want, though. It can be done in a myriad of different ways. You can actually have it show both live and recorded video. It can do all different kinds of notifications as well. This actually can all be done on a vector-based mapping engine. If you have an existing GIS server or something of the like, these events can actually be coming into an actual map. The map would actually auto-size, resize down to the actual area that you need for that actual specific event. Now, the most important part about this system is the growth of the actual system. You know, these events could be coming from a single building, multiple buildings, multiple geographic regions. We at Genetec use a out-of-the-box feature which we call federation. Federation is basically the way that we actually take multiple systems in by themselves. They could be, you know, the city halls, the schools, the public works within any kind of city environment. It could even be multiple, say, storefronts within, say, a retail environment or something like that, and basically take all those systems and bring them into one core location where we can actually take all these different events and then be able to notify at one location. And then from there, obviously, you can carve up however you want your permission rights and levels and that kind of thing. So the idea here is all these different events that we're getting from SDS can be an incredibly large or even a small system depending on how you want to break it up. They can be individual agencies all working under different budgets, however you want to do it. But the idea here is situational awareness and actually bringing all those events to the forefront.
Hey, thanks, Jared. So Kendra, what we'll do is we'll turn it over to you for Q&A.
Sure, sounds great. Thank you, Dan, and thank you, Jared. I did get some questions about the Guardian system and the sensor. So how does it behave, Dan, this question's for you, if there are multiple shooters in the building?
So it's a great question. Each sensor is independently run back, so there is no triangulation. So if we have multiple shooters in multiple locations, each sensor will alert separately. So if we have a shooter on the first floor and the second floor, then we're going to get initial alerts from the first floor and the second floor with location. If two shooters are side by side, it's going to react as if it's one location. So now you're going to move to that threat as it's one location. So then you would leverage the other capabilities that are in play, video management system, to identify whether you had one or two shooters.
All right, that makes sense. So one other question that came in is that people always seem to ask how many sensors they would need to cover a facility. Can you cover that again?
Yeah, so it's somewhat dynamic. It really depends on the customer's requirements based off their threat and vulnerability assessment. So one sensor has a 40-foot radius, a 2,500 square foot field of view, and depending on the customer requirements, they look at critical areas that they'd like to protect. In some locations, we do access control areas, common areas, and in some areas, they're looking for complete coverage. So we range from anywhere from 5 sensors installed up to some enterprise solutions across the U.S. at about 800 sensors. So really, all we need to do to make an assessment is we get a scaled floor plan. We start to overlay the sensors for a customer requirement, and then we start to lay those sensors in. So hopefully that answers the question. It's really dependent on the customer's needs and requirements and then the areas that they're looking to cover.
Okay. And Jared, a question for you. So you mentioned multiple sites and multiple buildings. So how does the Genetec platform or system get all that information displayed on the screen for the end user in a way that allows them to handle all that incoming information while they're also trying to coordinate a good response?
Absolutely. So inside the application, there's a couple of different ways that you can actually do it. You can do it in a more traditional way with a tree structure, with the events coming into a tile layout like you saw, and then you can actually organize those events as they come in via different access rules and rights, meaning you can send, like you said, notifications via text message, emails, all different kinds of things to specific individuals based on those rights. And those actually can be very dynamic in how they work as well. So as they're coming into the system, there may not actually be an active, say, link to live video from one entity to another. Take the school example, for instance. Schools may not want to give live video or recorded video to, say, a hierarchy up the chain to, say, like a PD environment for things like, I don't know, what am I trying to say, the privacy issues and that kinds of things. So what they'll do is they'll use a feature inside of our application called threat levels, And threat levels will then take action and change the actual rights and privileges that one would get at the hierarchy. So if an event happened at that school, the threat levels would change, and then the live and recorded video would then be displayed in the application. And that's what you're actually seeing up here on the screen. The other way to do it is, like I mentioned, through an application which we call our Plan Management application. Plan Manager is a vector-based GIS mapping engine built into that. I don't have an example of it on the screen here, but really you can start at a Google or like an Esri style layer in your map for your outside cameras and whatnot, and then actually drill into your different floor layouts or floor plans where you can then put these events on the screen. So as these events are coming in, only the pertinent information, the events that are coming in from SDS is actually being shown up to the user. And from there, you can actually drill in even more and create cases, acknowledge the events, pass the events on to other users, elevate the system to different kinds of threats, you know, to make the situational awareness to other organizations or individuals even that much greater.
All right, sounds very complex. There's a lot of features in there. Dan, I have another question for you about Guardian. Can it be used outdoors?
So Guardian, the Guardian system is an indoor system, so no, it cannot. It uses the tool technologies that I talked about, acoustic and infrared. So the infrared signature is emitted from natural sunlight and other aspects. So our outdoor system is the boomerang system. That's our sniper detection system. We use that to protect critical infrastructure within the U.S. That's our outdoor solution. So Guardian is only used indoors.
Okay, great. I think we have time for just one more. The question we get often, Dan, is does the system alert on suppressed weapons?
Yeah, it's a great question. Obviously, there's, you know, hundreds of thousands of different types of suppressors that are out there, and manufacturers from homegrown to professionally, you know, machined. So we have tested against suppressed weapons, and we have alerted. We haven't tested every suppressor in the world, but for all the testing that we've done, we've alerted every time. So what we do now is, you know, we're very confident that, you know, when we look at the percentage of weapon systems that are out there that are potentially used in an active shooter threat, you know, that we will alert for a suppressed weapon. If it's a very specialized weapon system that has a specific case, then obviously then we would have to look at it from a case-by-case perspective. But we look at probably about 98% of the weapon systems that are out there on the market that we're going to detect.
Okay, great. Thank you. Dan and Jared, I think that's about as much time as we want to leave everyone on the line today. So I just want to say to everyone that joined us today that we hope you enjoyed the demonstration, and if you have any lingering questions or you want any more information about either Guardian or Genetec, reach back to the person who invited you today, or you can reach out to us directly, phone, email, any contact form on our website, shooterdetectionsystems.com. And if you have any questions specific to Genetec and their features, you can reach out to Jared directly at jfullerton@genetec.com, and that information will be sent to you via the WebEx system after we conclude the event today, 20 minutes or so after. And just to let you all know that our next online live fire is scheduled for Thursday, August 25th, 11 a.m. Eastern. And just know that these events are not your only opportunity to talk to us and learn more about Guardian and our integrations, or the Genetec integration for that matter. We're always available to provide a product overview or even just take a simple phone call to discuss your unique needs of your facility and your security structure. So don't wait until our next live event. If you have any lingering questions, please reach out to us. And thanks again, everyone, for joining us, and have a great day.